The bridge of the Herald of Peace hummed quietly as it drifted through the empty space between star systems. Captain Ji-won Park sat in her command chair, reading reports on her tablet. It was supposed to be another routine diplomatic mission. 3 years, she had commanded this vessel, and 3 years of peaceful meetings with alien species across the galaxy. Her crew worked at their stations around her. The ship was small compared to the massive cargo haulers that moved between human colonies. But it was perfect for diplomatic work. Clean white walls, comfortable stations, and viewing screens that showed the stars outside. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," said Lieutenant Hanbit Song from the communications station. The young officer frowned at his display, adjusting the controls. "It's a distress signal, but the encryption is old. Velaron's signature." Ji-won sat up straighter. The Velarans were insectoid beings who lived 3 systems away. They were peaceful, known throughout the galaxy for their beautiful artwork and music. She had visited their world once, years ago. Their cities looked like living sculptures. Grown, rather than built. "Put it through," she ordered. Static filled the bridge. Through the noise came a voice, high and musical like wind chimes. But there was terror in that voice. "Anyone who can hear this." They came without warning. Ships in the sky. "They're burning everything. Please, we need help. Our children." The transmission cut to static again. Then another voice came through. This one was deeper, more controlled, but Ji-won could hear the fear beneath the words. "This is Velara Prime Emergency Command. The Krath Empire has invaded our system. They are destroying our cities from orbit. They are not accepting surrender. They are not taking prisoners. This is genocide. We invoke the Galactic Accord Article 7. Please. Someone. Anyone." The transmission ended with sounds that made Ji-won's blood run cold. Explosions. Screaming. And underneath it all, children singing. It was a Velaran lullaby, she realized. She had heard it before during her visit. The Velarans sang it to their young, before sleep. "Get me Ambassador Hyun," Ji-won said quietly. "And start recording everything from that signal." Dr. Yuna Kim appeared from her station at the back of the bridge. The xenolinguist was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes behind her glasses. "Captain, I can clean up that signal. Give me 10 minutes. Do it," Ji-won said. She turned to her navigation officer. "How far are we from Velara Prime?" 2 days at maximum speed, Captain." 2 days. Ji-won closed her eyes. 2 days could be a lifetime, when death rained from the sky. Ambassador Hyun Lee appeared on the main screen. The older woman looked tired. She had been in meetings with the Galactic Council for 6 hours, arguing about trade routes and mineral rights. Boring but necessary work. "Captain Park, what's wrong?" "We received a distress call from Velara Prime. The Krath Empire is attacking them." "Ambassador, it sounds like they're exterminating the entire species." Hyun's face went pale. "Show me." Ji-won played the cleaned-up transmission. Dr. Yuna had done good work. The audio was clear now. Too clear. They could hear everything. The explosions, the screams, the children singing their lullaby as their world burned around them. When it finished, Hyun sat in silence for a long moment. "I'm contacting the Galactic Council immediately," she said. "They have to intervene. The Krath can't be allowed to do this." 6 hours later, Ji-won received the Council's response. She read it 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. The Galactic Council acknowledged the distress call. They would launch an investigation. They would send observers to verify the situation. They would schedule an emergency session in 2 weeks to discuss possible responses. 2 weeks. "They're going to study it to death," said Commander Daewon Ko, her first officer. The man was twice her age and had been in space longer than she had been alive. He looked disgusted. "By the time they finish their investigation, there won't be any Velarans left to save." Ji-won looked at the communications board. 1 light blinked steadily. The automatic distress beacon from Velara Prime was still broadcasting, still crying out for help that would not come in time. Dr. Yuna, she said slowly. How is the signal clarity now? Perfect, Captain. I have over 2 hours of footage. The Krath are broadcasting their attack across their empire. They want others to see what happens to species that resist them. Show me the worst of it. Yuna hesitated. Captain, it's very bad. Show me. The main screen filled with images from Velara Prime. Krath soldiers. Massive reptilian beings in dark armor, moving through Velaran cities. They were not fighting soldiers. They were killing civilians. Men, women, children. The Velarans tried to flee, but the Krath shot them down. They tried to hide, but the Krath burned entire buildings. One scene showed a Velaran mother shielding her young with her body. The Krath soldier shot them both and moved on without pausing. Another clip showed a beautiful museum. Jiwan recognized it. She had visited during her diplomatic mission. It held 3,000 years of Velaran history and art. The Krath planted explosives and brought it down in seconds. They laughed as it fell. The final clip was the worst. A shelter where Velaran children were hiding. Someone had taught them the lullaby to keep them calm. Their voices were sweet and clear. The Krath broke down the doors. The singing stopped. Jiwan turned away from the screen. Her hands were shaking. Commander Daewon looked sick. Even Lieutenant Hanbit had tears on his face. Captain, Yuna said quietly. What do we do? Jiwan stood up. Her legs felt weak, but her voice was steady. Send everything we have directly to Earth Command. Mark it urgent priority. Include my personal recommendation for immediate military response. The Council will be furious, Daewon warned. We're supposed to go through proper channels. The proper channels are going to debate while an entire species dies, Jiwan said. I don't care if the Council is furious. Send it. The transmission shot through space toward Earth. It carried every second of audio, every image of horror, every plea for help. It carried the singing children and their sudden silence. On Earth, in the headquarters of the Terran Defense Force, Admiral Minho Choi received the transmission. He watched it once. His face showed no emotion, but his hands gripped the edge of his desk hard enough to make his knuckles white. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, ships moved through Earth's orbit. Cargo vessels and passenger liners. Peaceful ships for a peaceful humanity. But beneath the orbital stations, hidden in the dark side of the moon, other ships waited. Ships that had not moved in decades. Ships that the galaxy had never seen. Minho picked up his secure communication device. Get me the president. Tell him it's Protocol Omega. He looked back at his screen, where the image of a Velaran child was frozen mid-song. Tell him humanity needs to wake up. Back on the Herald of Peace, Jiwan received a response from Earth faster than she expected. Just 3 words appeared on her screen. Humanity is coming. She read those words to her bridge crew. No one spoke. They all understood what it meant. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. Something the species had kept hidden for 600 years of peace. They were about to learn what humans could do when someone harmed the innocent. And they were about to learn why humanity had never thrown away its weapons. Even after centuries of peace. Peace was not weakness. Peace was a choice. And humanity was about to make a different choice. President Daeho Han stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Government. Every representative was present, either in person or through hologram. The chamber was silent. They had all seen the transmission from Velara Prime. They had all heard the children singing. 600 years ago, our ancestors nearly destroyed themselves in war, Daeho said. His voice was calm but firm. We learned from that mistake. We chose peace. We explored the galaxy with open hands instead of closed fists. We became traders, diplomats, scientists. The galaxy knows us as the peaceful ones. He paused and looked around the chamber. But we never forgot what we were capable of. We kept our military strong, not because we wanted to use it, but because we hoped we would never need to. We trained. We built. We prepared. And we prayed we would never have to show the galaxy what humans could do when pushed too far. On the screens behind him, images from Velara Prime played on repeat. The burning cities, the murdered civilians, the destroyed culture. Today, the Krath Empire is committing genocide. The Galactic Council has chosen paperwork over action. They will debate and discuss, while an entire species is erased from existence. I am asking this government for permission to do what the Council will not. I am asking permission to mobilize the full military might of humanity. The vote was unanimous. Every single representative voted yes. Some cried while they did it. Some showed anger. But all of them voted the same way. Within an hour, the order went out across human space. Every military base received the same message. Protocol Omega was active. Full mobilization authorized. Fleet Admiral Junho Nam stood in the command center of Luna Base, hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon. Around him, screens lit up with activity. Ships that had been dormant for decades began powering up. Crews that had been training their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come rushed to their stations. How long until the first wave can launch? He asked his operations officer. 18 hours, Admiral. We're pulling ships from every reserve fleet. The shipyards are working at maximum capacity to load weapons and supplies. Junho nodded. Send word to fleet captains. I want the most experienced commanders on the first wave. This won't be a show of force. This will be a rescue mission with hostile resistance. We go in ready for full combat. He pulled up a star map. Velara Prime was marked in red. The distance was considerable, but human ships were fast. Faster than most species knew. The galaxy had seen human cargo haulers and diplomatic vessels. They had never seen human warships at full speed. What about the Galactic Council? Asked Commander Unji Shin, his second in command. They'll try to stop us. Let them try, Junho said. Ambassador Hyun is handling the political side. Our job is to make sure there are Velarans left to save. In the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Hyun Lee stood before the assembled representatives of 300 species. The council chamber was massive, a sphere with platforms floating at different levels. Each species had their designated spot. The humans were positioned in the middle tier, neither prestigious nor insulting. The human delegation requests immediate military intervention in the Velara Prime crisis, Hyun said clearly. Council Speaker Fel Khan, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light, pulsed with displeasure. The Council has already issued our response. We will investigate and determine the appropriate action. Military intervention requires proper procedure. How long will that procedure take? Hyun asked. At minimum, 2 weeks, perhaps longer. We must verify the claims, assess the situation, and the Velarans will be dead, Hyun interrupted. In the council chamber, interrupting was considered extremely rude. She did not care. I have footage. 300 hours of footage, showing the Krath systematically murdering every Velaran they can find. How much verification do you need? John Reader. John Reader. John Reader. John Reader. John Reader. The council does not make rash decisions, another representative said. We must be certain before we act. Hyun took a deep breath. Then, humanity will act alone. We invoke Article 7 of the Galactic Accord. Defense of endangered species. We are moving to protect the Velarans. The council can join us or stand aside. The chamber erupted in protests. Species shouted over each other. Many were angry that humanity would act without permission. Others were afraid. They had never seen humans act aggressively before. If humanity deploys military forces without council approval, there will be consequences. Speaker Felkan warned. We accept those consequences, Hyun said. History will judge whether we acted too quickly or whether you acted too slowly. I know which judgment I prefer." She turned and left the chamber. Behind her, the council descended into chaos. Across Earth, people gathered around screens to watch the deployment. War correspondent Minji An stood at the edge of the primary launch bay, her camera pointed at the assembled fleet. "What you're seeing behind me is something humanity has not shown the galaxy in 600 years, she spoke into her microphone. "These are not cargo ships. These are not exploration vessels. These are warships. And they are preparing to launch." The ships were massive, dreadnoughts longer than some cities, carriers that held hundreds of fighters, cruisers bristling with weapons, destroyers built for speed and firepower. They floated in formation, their hulls a dark gray that seemed to absorb light. For 6 centuries, humanity has maintained these fleets in secret, Minji continued. "We hoped we would never need them. We prayed for peace. But we never forgot how to fight. Today, the galaxy will see what humans are capable of when innocents are murdered." On the flagship Indomitable Will, Captain Taeyang Quan walked through the corridors. His crew was young. Most of them had never seen combat. They had trained for it their entire lives. But training was not the same as reality. He stopped at the pilot ready room. Commander Hana Yoon was briefing her fighter pilots. She went by the call sign Valkyrie, and she was the best pilot in the fleet. "The Krath have numerical superiority," Hana was saying. "Their ships are bigger than ours. But bigger doesn't mean better. We're faster. We're smarter. And we've trained for this our entire lives. They think we're weak because we chose peace. Today we show them that peace was a choice, not a limitation." The pilots cheered. Taeyang smiled. Good. They needed that confidence. Down in the Marine deployment section, General Sora Bay walked among her soldiers. 400,000 Marines were preparing to deploy. They checked their weapons and armor. They reviewed their orders. Many were quiet, focused. Others talked nervously. "Marines." Sora's voice boomed through the bay. Instantly, everyone stopped and stood at attention. "You have trained for years. You know your jobs. But remember this. We are not going to conquer. We are going to protect. We are not going to destroy. We are going to save. The Krath kill civilians. We do not. The Krath murder children. We protect them. That is the difference between them and us. That is why we will win." On ride, the Marines roared their approval. 18 hours after the order was given, the first wave of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet launched from Luna Base. 847 warships rose from the hidden shipyards and accelerated toward deep space. They moved in perfect formation, organized into battle groups and support elements. From Earth, billions of humans watched them go. Some cried. Some prayed. Some simply stood in silence. This was humanity's military might, hidden for 600 years. Now, it was awake. Admiral Junho Nam sat in his command chair aboard the command ship Eternal Vigil. His fleet stretched out before him on the tactical display. It was the largest military deployment in human history since the ancient wars. "All ships report ready, Admiral," his operations officer said. "Set course for Valara Prime," Junho ordered. "Maximum speed, and send this message to the Krath Empire. Surrender the Valaran system immediately or face the consequences. You have attacked a species under the protection of the Galactic Accord. Humanity is coming. This is your only warning." The message shot through space toward Krath territory. When it arrived, the Krath commanders laughed. They had never heard of human military power. They thought humans were weak traders who bought and sold instead of fought. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The fleet jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, Earth continued its preparations. This was just the first wave. If more force was needed, humanity would send it. If the entire might of human civilization was required, it would be deployed. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. Humanity had chosen peace, but that choice could be unmade. And when humans went to war, they did not go halfway. They brought everything they had. Valara Prime still cried out for help. The distress beacon still broadcast into space. But now, help was coming, and it carried the full weight of humanity's wrath. The Krath 3rd Battle Group floated in space at the edge of Velaron territory. High Commander Vex Thor watched his tactical display with satisfaction. 2,400 warships under his command. The largest battle group in the Krath Empire. Nothing could stand against such force. "Commander, we have contacts," his sensor officer reported. "Unknown ships approaching from human space. Count is 847 vessels." Vex Thor laughed. A deep, rumbling sound that made his bridge crew flinch. So, the humans finally grew a spine. How amusing. "What class of ships?" "Unknown, Commander. They're not matching any profiles in our database. Energy signatures are very high. They're probably haulers filled with troops," Vex Thor said dismissively. "Or those pathetic diplomatic ships they fly around in. Prepare to fire when they enter range. We'll crush them quickly and return to our work on Valara Prime." Aboard the Indomitable Will, Captain Taeyang Kwon studied the Krath formation. They were arranged in a wall pattern. Standard intimidation tactic. Show your numbers and hope the enemy turns back. "All ships, battle formation Delta," he ordered. Fighter squadrons prepare to launch. Weapons hot. The human fleet shifted smoothly. The massive dreadnoughts moved to the center. Carriers spread to the flanks. Cruisers and destroyers formed a screening line. It happened in perfect synchronization, the result of endless training. "Sir," receiving a transmission from the Krath commander, his communications officer said. "Put it through." Vex Thor's face appeared on the screen. The Krath commander was enormous. His reptilian features twisted in what might have been a smile. "Human ship, you are outnumbered 3-1. Turn back now, and we will allow you to retreat. Resist, and we will destroy you. This is your only warning." Taeyang stood from his command chair. He was half the size of Vex Thor, but his voice was cold as ice. "Krath vessel, you have committed genocide against the Velaron people. You have murdered civilians and destroyed a peaceful civilization. Surrender immediately, or we will remove you by force. You've mistaken our peace for weakness. Today, you learn the difference." Vex Thor laughed again. Such brave words from such a small force. "Very well, human. You will serve as an example to the galaxy. All ships, open fire." The Krath fleet lit up with weapons fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked across space toward the human fleet. Thousands of shots, enough firepower to vaporize a planet. The human shields flared bright blue as they absorbed the impacts. Not a single ship took damage. "All ships," Taeyang said quietly, "return fire." The human fleet unleashed its weapons. Railguns fired projectiles at 3% of light speed. Missile pods launched guided warheads. Plasma cannons spat superheated bolts. The space between the two fleets became a storm of destruction. The difference was immediately clear. Krath shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They had fought wars against species that used lasers and plasma. They had never encountered kinetic weapons traveling at relativistic speeds. The railgun slugs punched through their shields like they weren't even there. Ships exploded. Hulls shattered. Entire sections of the Krath wall simply ceased to exist. "What kind of weapons are those?" Vex Thor screamed at his sensor officer. "Why aren't our shields stopping them?" "Unknown technology, Commander. Their projectiles are too fast. And their missiles are maneuvering independently. Our point defense can't track them all." On the Indomitable Will, Taeyang watched the tactical display. The Krath were in disarray. Their wall formation was breaking apart as ships tried to maneuver away from human fire. "Launch fighters," he ordered. Commander Hana Yoon led her squadron out of the carrier bays. 300 fighters, small and fast, streaking toward the Krath fleet, like angry hornets. All wings, this is Valkyrie, she said over the squadron channel. Target their command ships. Let's cut off the head. The fighters dove into the Krath formation. They were faster than anything the Krath had ever seen. They dodged between capital ships, their weapons tearing through armor and systems. Krath fighters scrambled to intercept, but they were too slow and too clumsy. Hana's pilots flew circles around them. She targeted a Krath cruiser, locked on, and fired. Her missiles struck the ship's bridge. It went dark and began drifting. Valkyrie to all wings. They're completely unprepared for our tactics. Keep the pressure on. All. The battle lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, the Krath, 3rd Battle Group, had been annihilated. 2,400 ships destroyed or disabled. Some Krath vessels tried to surrender. The humans accepted, taking the crews prisoner and treating them with respect despite what they had done. Human casualties were light. 23 ships damaged, 2 destroyed. 736 crew members killed. Each loss hurt, but the ratio was stunning. The Krath had outnumbered them 3-1 and had been crushed completely. Admiral Junho Nam watched the battle reports from the Eternal Vigil. His face showed no satisfaction, only grim determination. Secure the survivors, he ordered. Then proceed to Velara Prime. The Krath still have forces on the ground. General Sora, your Marines are cleared for deployment. On the ground of Velara Prime, the remaining Krath forces realized their fleet was gone. Their commanders made a terrible decision. If they couldn't hold the planet, they would make sure there were no Velarons left to save. The massacre intensified. Krath soldiers moved through the refugee camps, executing everyone they found. They burned the few remaining cities. They destroyed water treatment facilities and food storage centers. In one shelter, 300 Velaron children huddled together. Their caretakers had been killed. They were alone and terrified. Outside, they could hear the Krath soldiers getting closer. Then the sky opened up. Hundreds of drop pods slammed into the ground around the shelter. Hatches blew open, and human Marines poured out. Lieutenant Sunho Park was first out of his pod, his rifle up and ready. Contact front, someone shouted. Krath soldiers were advancing on the shelter. Defensive positions, Sunho ordered. Protect that building. The Marines spread out, using their drop pods as cover. When the Krath soldiers opened fire, the humans returned fire with devastating precision. Each Marine had trained for years. Each shot was carefully aimed. The Krath, used to murdering unarmed civilians, found themselves facing professional soldiers. The fight was short and brutal. The Krath soldiers fell. The ones who tried to surrender were taken prisoner. The ones who kept fighting were eliminated. Sunho approached the shelter door. He could hear crying inside. Carefully, he opened it. 300 sets of eyes stared at him. The Velaron children pressed themselves against the back wall. They had seen Krath soldiers break down doors. They thought death had come for them. Sunho removed his helmet. His face was young and kind. He smiled gently. It's okay, he said softly. We're humans. We're here to help. You're safe now. For a moment, no one moved. Then one small Velaron child, no bigger than a human toddler, crept forward. She looked up at Sunho with huge, frightened eyes. Are you the ones from the sky? She asked in her musical voice. The ones who answer prayers? Sunho knelt down. Yes. We heard you singing. We came as fast as we could. The child reached out and touched his hand. Then she started crying. Not from fear anymore, but from relief. The other children surged forward. They clustered around the Marines, seeking protection and comfort. Sergeant Boram Choi, the platoon's combat medic, moved among them. She checked them for injuries, speaking softly and gently. Many were hurt. Some were sick. All were traumatized. but they were alive. Sun-ho, Borum called. We need to get these children to the evacuation point. More Kroth could be coming. Copy that. Marines, defensive perimeter. We're moving these children to safety. The Marines formed up around the children. They moved through the ruined city carefully. 3 times they encountered Krath soldiers. 3 times the Marines eliminated the threat before the children were endangered. The humans fought with cold efficiency, but also with restraint. They took prisoners when possible. They only used lethal force when necessary. At the evacuation point, human transports were landing. Medical teams rushed forward to take care of the wounded. Volunteers distributed food and water. Engineers began setting up temporary shelters. One of the volunteers, a young woman named Ji-young-ro, knelt beside a Velaron mother, holding her injured child. The mother was exhausted and terrified. "Let me help," Jiang said gently. She had basic medical training. She cleaned and bandaged the child's wounds while the mother watched. "Why?" the mother asked. "Why did you come?" "We're not important. We have nothing to offer you." Jiang looked at her with surprise. "Your people. That's all the reason we need." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. 30,000 human Marines had deployed in the first wave. They moved through every remaining Velaron city and settlement. They found survivors and brought them to safety. They eliminated Krath soldiers but treated prisoners humanely. They set up field hospitals and refugee centers. The galaxy watched in amazement. News networks across 300 species broadcast the footage. They saw human soldiers fighting with incredible skill, but they also saw human medics treating wounded Velerans with gentleness. They saw engineers building shelters. They saw volunteers feeding hungry children. This was not conquest. This was rescue. In the Galactic Council chambers, the representatives watched the same footage. Many looked ashamed. They had chosen paperwork and procedure. Humanity had chosen action. And now the difference was clear for everyone to see. Ambassador Hyun Lee stood before them again. "The first wave of human forces has secured 3 major Velaron cities," she reported. "We have evacuated 40,000 civilians to safety. The remaining Krath ground forces are surrendering or being eliminated. The Velaron people will survive." She paused and looked around the chamber. No thanks to this council. The chamber was silent. No one argued. No one protested. They had seen what humanity could do when pushed to action. And they had seen what happened when bureaucracy delayed justice. The news of the 3rd Battle Group's destruction reached the Kroth homeworld within hours. Emperor Zalmur stood in his throne room, crushing the datapad in his massive clawed hand. Around him, his military advisors cowered. 2,400 ships, he hissed. 2,400 ships destroyed by a species we thought was weak. Explain this to me. High General Kurnak stepped forward nervously. Emperor, the humans possess technology we didn't know existed. Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered. And their tactics— I don't want excuses, Zalmur roared. I want solutions. The entire galaxy is watching. If we appear weak, other species will rise against us. We must crush humanity immediately and completely. He turned to his supreme military commander. Mobilize the Grand Fleet. I want every ship we have. 15,000 vessels. I will personally lead them. We will destroy the human fleet. Then we will take their homeworld. The galaxy will learn what happens to those who defy the Krath Empire. End quote. Emperor, perhaps we should consider negotiations, Kurnak began. Zalmur's tail whipped out and struck the general, sending him crashing into a wall. We do not negotiate with prey. Mobilize the fleet. Now. Across the Krath Empire, the call went out. Every ship was recalled from patrol. Every reserve was activated. The Grand Fleet assembled in Krath space. A massive armada of 15,000 warships. It was the largest military force ever gathered in galactic history. On Earth, Admiral Junho Nam received the intelligence reports. His analysts had been tracking Krath movements. When he saw the size of the assembling fleet, he allowed himself a small smile. "They're committing everything," he said to Vice Admiral Unji Shin, who had arrived with the second wave of human forces. "Good. Let's make sure they lose everything." Unji nodded. She commanded the Terran Special Operations Fleet. 1,200 ships, equipped with experimental technology. Stealth corvettes that could vanish from sensors. Electronic warfare cruisers that could blind enemy fleets. And specialized dreadnoughts, carrying weapons that humanity hoped never to use. "My fleet is ready," she said. "What's the plan?" Junho pulled up a tactical display. "The Krath will come in a massive wall formation. They'll rely on overwhelming numbers. We'll let them think it's working. Then we'll show them what human strategy really looks like." Meanwhile, on Valara Prime, the humanitarian operation continued. Sergeant Boram Choi worked in one of the field hospitals, treating wounded Valarans. She had been awake for 36 hours straight. But she refused to rest, while people needed help. A young Velaran girl was brought in, badly injured from building collapse. Boram worked quickly, stabilizing her condition and treating her wounds. The girl's mother hovered nearby, chirping anxiously in the Velaran language. "She's going to be fine," Boram said through a translator device. "She needs rest, but she'll recover." The mother touched Boram's hand with her antenna. The Velaran gesture of deepest gratitude. "You saved my daughter. You humans. You came from the stars to save us. Why? What do you gain?" Boram smiled tiredly. "We don't gain anything. We do this because it's right. Because no parent should have to watch their child die. Because no species should face extinction, while others stand by and do nothing." A human news crew was filming the exchange. The footage was broadcast across the galaxy. Species everywhere watched a human medic, exhausted and covered in dust, working to save an alien child. They saw the tenderness in her touch, the determination in her eyes. Public opinion across the galaxy was shifting. Many species began to question their governments. Why hadn't they acted? Why had they let the Galactic Council debate while genocide occurred? Why had it taken humanity to do what was right? 3 species submitted formal petitions to the Council, asking humanity to help with their own crises. A peaceful species facing raiders. A colony world, under threat of invasion. A refugee population starving while bureaucrats argued about aid distribution. Ambassador Hyun Lee stood before the Council again. "Humanity will consider these requests. But first, we have a Krath Grand Fleet to deal with." The Krath Grand Fleet arrived at Valara Prime 3 days after the battle group's destruction. 15,000 warships in a formation so large it blotted out the stars. On the flagship Eternal Dominion, Emperor Zalmur surveyed the human fleet through his viewscreen. The humans had 1,200 ships now. The second wave had arrived to reinforce the first. Still, heavily outnumbered. "This will be their grave," Zalmur said with satisfaction. "All ships, advance. Show them the true power of the Krath Empire." The Grand Fleet moved forward like a steel wave. Energy readings spiked as they charged weapons. This would not be a quick skirmish. This would be a statement, a demonstration of power that would echo through galactic history. Admiral Junho Nam watched them come. His fleet floated in defensive formation around Valara Prime. Behind him, on the planet, 200,000 more Marines had deployed. Valaran civilians were still being evacuated to human transports. "They're trying to intimidate us," Unji said from her command ship. 15,000 to our 1,200. They think we'll panic." "Let them think it," Junho replied. He opened a channel to all human ships. "All vessels, this is Admiral Nam. Today we face an enemy that believes genocide is acceptable. They believe in conquest through terror. They believe might makes right. Today, we teach them otherwise. All ships, execute. Plan Meridian." The human fleet split into 5 groups. It looked like a panic response, like they were trying to flee in different directions. The Krath commanders laughed and divided their fleet to pursue. That was their first mistake. The moment the Krath fleet divided, the human ships stopped running. Each group turned and unleashed devastating firepower on their pursuers. The Krath formations, too large and cumbersome, couldn't maneuver effectively. They got in each other's way, blocked each other's lines of fire. Then Vice Admiral Unji's stealth corvettes revealed themselves. They had been hiding in the asteroid field nearby, completely invisible to Krath sensors. 200 stealth ships appeared behind the Krath formation and struck at their command vessels. The electronic warfare cruisers activated their jamming systems. Suddenly, Krath ships couldn't communicate with each other. Their tactical networks collapsed. Their coordinated formations fell apart into chaos. Now, Admiral Junho ordered. All ships. Convergence. Assault. The 5 human groups came together like a spear thrust into the heart of the Krath fleet. They moved with precision, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when. Hundreds of years of tactical development and training came together in perfect synchronization. The Krath had numbers. Humanity had strategy. Railguns fired in coordinated volleys, overwhelming shields and shattering hulls. Fighters launched from carriers and swarmed Krath capital ships like wolves taking down prey. Human destroyers darted through the enemy formation, their speed allowing them to strike and vanish before return fire could hit them. Commander Hana Yun led her fighter wings in precise strikes. Target their engines first. Make them sitting ducks. Her pilots obeyed with deadly efficiency. Krath ships found themselves crippled and drifting, unable to maneuver or flee. Some tried to surrender. The humans accepted, taking prisoners and withdrawing medical ships to treat wounded enemy crews. Emperor Zalmur watched his grand strategy collapse. How is this possible? We outnumber them. We should be crushing them. His tactical officer was frantically trying to re-establish communications with the fleet. Emperor, we've lost contact with 30% of our ships. The jamming is too strong. And their weapons. They're cutting through our fleet. Like we're not even here. All ships converge on the human flagship, Zalmur ordered. We kill their commander, and they'll fall apart. 3,000 Krath ships broke from the battle and rushed toward the eternal vigil. Junho watched them come without concern. Dreadnought group, defensive wall, he ordered calmly. 12 human dreadnoughts moved into position between the charging Krath fleet and the flagship. They were enormous ships, heavily armored and bristling with weapons. As the Krath charged, the dreadnoughts opened fire. The space between them became a solid wall of weapons fire. Nothing could pass through it. Krath ships tried and were obliterated. Their shields couldn't handle the concentrated firepower. Their armor wasn't thick enough. One by one, they died. The battle raged for 8 hours. It was the largest space battle in recorded history. Sensors across the galaxy recorded it. News networks broadcast it live. 300 species watched as humanity demonstrated what they were truly capable of. The tide of battle turned completely. The Krath Grand Fleet, so imposing at the start, was being systematically destroyed. 12,000 ships gone. 2,000 surrendering. 1,000 trying to flee. On the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Zalmur finally understood. His empire had picked a fight with the wrong species. Humans were not weak. They had been patient. There was a difference. His ship shook as human railgun rounds pounded the shields. Systems failed around him. His bridge crew was in panic. Emperor, we must retreat, High General Kurnak pleaded. We've lost. If we stay, we die. Zalmur looked at the tactical display. It showed the truth clearly. The battle was over. The Krath had lost. A transmission came through from the indomitable will. Captain Taeyang Kwan's face appeared on screen. Emperor Zalmur, Taeyang said. His voice was firm but not cruel. Your fleet is destroyed. Your ship is crippled. Surrender now, and your crew lives. We don't wage war on the helpless. But if you continue fighting, we will end this. Zalmur looked around his bridge. His crew was terrified. They were looking at him, waiting for orders. For the first time in his life, the Emperor felt fear. He had spent his life believing the Krath were supreme. That might made right. That the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. Now he faced a species that was stronger. And they weren't acting like he would have. They offered mercy. They treated prisoners with respect. They fought with honor. His voice cracked. I surrender. The Eternal Dominion went dark, its weapons powering down. Around it, the remaining Krath ships followed their Emperor's lead. The battle was over. Admiral Junho Nam broadcast his message to the entire galaxy. The Krath Grand Fleet has surrendered. All vessels are to stand down. Medical ships are en route to treat wounded on all sides. The genocide of the Velaran people is over. Justice has been served. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had faced impossible odds and won. Not through cruelty, not through genocide, but through superior tactics, better technology, and disciplined warfare. They had shown the galaxy something new. They had shown what real strength looked like. 3 months after the Battle of Velara Prime, Captain Jiwan Park stood in the main square of the rebuilt Velaran capital city. Around her, Velaran citizens moved through streets that were slowly returning to life. Buildings were being reconstructed. Gardens were growing again. Children played, their musical laughter filling the air. It was hard to believe this had been a war zone. 200,000 human Marines had remained after the battle, but most of them weren't fighting anymore. They were building. Engineer battalions constructed new infrastructure. Medical teams ran hospitals and clinics. Logistics units distributed food and supplies. General Sora Bay approached, removing her helmet. The general looked tired but satisfied. The last of the Krath prisoners has been transferred to the detention facility. They'll face trial next month. Fair trial? Jiwan asked. The fairest we can give them, Sora confirmed. Human judges, Velaran judges, and neutral observers from the Galactic Council. Emperor Zalmur will answer for genocide. His soldiers will answer for murder. But everyone gets legal representation. Everyone gets to present their defense. That's how we do things. A group of Velaran children ran past, chasing each other in a game. One of them tripped and fell. Before Jiwan could react, a human Marine nearby knelt down to help. He checked the child for injuries, smiled, and sent her on her way. The child chirped happily and rejoined her friends. That's Corporal Kyung-so, Sora said. Lost his best friend in the battle. But look at him. He's still gentle with the children. That's what makes us different. Dr. Yuna Kim emerged from a nearby building that had been converted into a cultural center. She carried several data pads filled with Velaran texts and artwork. Velaran scholars followed her, chattering excitedly. Captain, Yuna called out. We just recovered a complete archive of pre-war Velaran poetry. It was hidden in underground vaults. 3,000 years of literature that the Krath didn't destroy. The Velaran scholars surrounded Jiwan, their antennae waving in excitement and gratitude. One elder spoke, his voice translated by the device at his neck. You saved our lives. You saved our culture. You saved our future. How can we ever repay this debt? Jiwan smiled. You don't owe us anything. You just need to live. Rebuild. Create. That's all the payment we need. Across the galaxy, in the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Hyun Lee stood before the assembled representatives once more. This time, the atmosphere was different. The representatives looked at her with a mixture of respect and fear. They had seen what humanity could do. The United Earth government proposes the creation of the Terran Accord, Hyun announced. She projected a document onto the central display, a rapid response defense force dedicated to protecting species from genocide, slavery, and extinction. Member species would contribute resources. Humanity would contribute military force and strategic coordination. Council Speaker Felkan pulsed uncertainly. This would give humanity significant military authority across the galaxy. Yes, Hyun agreed simply. Because when innocent people cry for help, someone needs to answer immediately. Not in 2 weeks. Not after investigations and committees. Immediately. The Council has proven it cannot do this. Humanity can. A representative from a small species called the Tilvar stood up. My people face raids from pirates. The Council told us to be patient while we lost hundreds of citizens. I support this accord. I trust humanity more than I trust this Council. Another representative joined in. Then another. The debate raged for hours. Some species opposed it, fearful of human military dominance, but more supported it. Remembering the footage from Valara Prime, remembering the children who would have died if the Council had its way. Finally, the vote was called. The Terran Accord passed with 78% support. Hyun bowed to the Council. Humanity accepts this responsibility. We will not abuse this trust. We will protect the innocent. We will answer when others call for help. This is our promise to the galaxy. On Earth, President Daeho Han addressed humanity from the same chamber where he had asked for war mobilization months ago. Today, the galaxy has placed great trust in us, he said. They've asked us to be their guardians. This is both an honor and a burden. We must remain vigilant. We must remain strong. But we must also remain human. We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We protect. That is what makes us worthy of this trust. He paused and looked directly into the camera. To our brave soldiers still deployed across the galaxy, you have done humanity proud. You showed the universe our strength and our compassion. Now it's time for many of you to come home. The demobilization began. Most of the Terran fleet returned to Earth. The Marines rotated home in waves, replaced by smaller peacekeeping forces. The massive warships that had shocked the galaxy were returned to their hidden berths. But now, the galaxy knew they existed. The deterrent was revealed. Admiral Junho Nam oversaw the transition to peacetime operations. He met with Fleet Admiral Council to establish rapid response protocols. Small, fast fleets would be maintained at strategic locations. If another crisis occurred, humanity could respond within days, instead of weeks. We showed them the hammer, Junho said to his staff officers. Now let's hope they never make us use it again. Commander Hana Yoon returned to a training facility on Mars. She had been promoted and given a new role, teaching the next generation of pilots. Young officers gathered around her, eager to learn from the legendary Valkyrie. Speed and weapons don't win battles, she told her students. Discipline does. Training does. Knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. That's what separates us from the Krath. Remember that. I'm takes the tension. Rensasen Stent former Kroof. Lieutenant Sunho Park also became an instructor, teaching ground combat tactics with an emphasis on ethics and rules of engagement. His lectures were popular, always full of Marines wanting to learn from someone who had fought on Valara Prime. We could have killed every Krath soldier we found, he told his class one day. We were angry. We wanted revenge for what they did to the Velarons, but we took prisoners instead. We treated them with respect, because the moment we start acting like them, we lose what makes us human. Sergeant Boram Choi chose to stay on Valara Prime. She joined the medical aid mission permanently, helping rebuild the Velaron healthcare system. She trained Velaron doctors in human medical techniques. She worked in clinics treating patients who still suffered from injuries and trauma. War correspondent Minji An completed her documentary about the Velaron campaign. It was called The Day Humanity Roared, and became the most watched piece of media in galactic history. Species across 300 worlds watched it. They saw the battles. They saw the mercy. They saw what humanity was capable of when pushed to action. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed. The Kroth Empire was dissolved. Its former territories became independent systems with human peacekeepers overseeing the transition. Emperor Zalmur was convicted of genocide and imprisoned for life. He would spend his remaining years in a facility where he could see Valara Prime through a window, watching the civilization he tried to destroy flourish again. The Terran Accord prevented 23 potential genocides through deterrence alone. Pirates stopped raiding when they learned human patrol fleets were nearby. Aggressive empires reconsidered expansion when they realized humanity would respond to threats against peaceful species. Humanity's reputation transformed completely. They were no longer seen as soft traders. They were the galaxy's guardians, the sleeping giants who could be awakened if needed. Most species felt safer knowing humans existed. A few feared them, but all respected them. On Valara Prime, a massive monument was erected in the capital city square. It showed human soldiers helping Valaran children, their hands joined together. The inscription was written in both languages. When we called into the darkness, they answered with light. When we faced extinction, they gave us hope. When evil seemed victorious, they reminded the galaxy that good still exists. This monument honors humanity, the species that heard our plea and saved us from extinction. May their courage inspire the galaxy forever. Captain Ji-won Park, now promoted to Admiral, attended the monument's unveiling. She stood beside Dr. Yuna Kim, who had become Earth's ambassador to Valara Prime. Thousands of Valarans attended the ceremony. Their musical voices rose in song, the same lullaby that human forces had heard in that desperate distress call 5 years ago. But now it wasn't a song of fear. It was a song of gratitude. A young Velaran girl approached Ji-won. She was older now, but Ji-won recognized her. This was the child who had asked Lieutenant Sunho if humans were the ones from the sky who answer prayers. The child from the shelter. "Thank you," the girl said in perfect human language. She had been studying Earth culture. "Thank you for hearing us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for saving us." Ji-won knelt down, just as Sunho had 5 years ago. "We'll always hear you. That's our promise. No species should face extinction alone. No cry for help should go unanswered." The girl handed Ji-won a flower, a Velaran bloom that only grew after great trauma. It symbolized survival and rebirth. "Will you promise something else?" the girl asked. "What's that?" "Promise that if someone else calls for help, you'll answer them too. Like you answered us." Ji-won smiled and accepted the flower. "That's a promise humanity made to the entire galaxy. We'll keep it." She stood and looked at the monument. At the Velaran citizens celebrating around it. At the human peacekeepers standing guard, not as conquerors but as friends and protectors. Behind her, Dr. Yuna spoke quietly. 5 years ago, we were just explorers and traders. Now we're guardians. That's a big responsibility. "It is," Ji-won agreed. "But we chose it. And we'll honor it. Because that's what makes us human." The ceremony continued. Songs were sung. Speeches were given. Children played around the monument, both Velaran and human children together. A new generation that would grow up knowing peace. In orbit, a small human patrol fleet kept watch. Ready but not aggressive. Vigilant but not threatening. The same ships that had brought war 5 years ago now brought peace. Across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, species went about their lives with a new confidence. The weak no longer had to fear the strong. The peaceful no longer had to worry about the aggressive. Because if evil rose again, if genocide threatened again, if innocence cried out for help again, they knew the answer would come. Humanity would hear the plea, and humanity would bring its full military power to protect the innocent. That was the promise. That was the covenant. That was the new galactic order. And in the darkness of space, the human fleets waited. Patient, peaceful, but ready, always ready. Because the galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity chose peace. But that choice was not weakness. It was strength under control. And when that control was released, when humanity was pushed too far, when innocent lives hung in the balance, the sleeping giant would awaken, and the galaxy would remember why humans had never thrown away their weapons, even after 600 years of peace. Peace was not the absence of the ability to wage war. Peace was the choice not to. And humanity would always choose peace first. But they would always be ready for war if peace was not enough. That was the human way. That was what made them special. That was why, when the Velarans sang their lullaby now, they sang it without fear, because humanity was listening, and humanity would always answer.